Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the very long delayed review for Occult Chronicles. Holy crap. So, as you guys know, this year I began reviewing the games that I played on my channel, just to give you guys the synopsis of what I've thought about them. I tend to play very specific games on my channel, and I've replayed quite a few of them on my channel over time. My channel seems to be mostly an FPS and turn-based strategy channel, from what I can tell. Very few things that are different than that make it up here. But in any case, Occult Chronicles is a turn-based roguelike game. And I figured it was well worth and well past time to give it a review. I play this game every year around Halloween, and it's a game which I've mentioned that I cannot recommend people actually pick up because of some of the features of the game. And so it took me a long time to put together 3 pages of review. 1 page is dedicated to balance, and if you're curious about my thoughts, in case you don't really, in case you want to read them instead of, say, listen to me chat about them, down in the comment section below there will be a comment from me which will have this review there, in case you want to read my thoughts instead of, or in addition to, hear me talk about them. So, here's Jasper Kelt as he begins his quest to rid the world of a giant green ooze as the first encounter he discovered on the mansion. I forgot about this. Alright, so let's get started without any further ado. Or I'm going to start reading all the text on the screen again. So, the first thing I like talking about when it comes to a video game is the video aspect of it. And Occult Chronicles was a tough one for me to rate for the graphics. You see, this is a Vic Davis game, a Cryptic Comet game. And generally, for all the games he's made, I have greatly enjoyed the art on all the cards. All his games play like really complicated board games of a sort. And the art in this game is more cartoonish than it is in his other games, like Armageddon Empires or Soul Infernum in particular. I didn't play that much Six Gun Saga to be able to remember what the art looks like in that, but I was pretty sure it was a little more realistic looking than what we have here for the card art. On one hand, I feel that the art on all the other Cryptic Comet games are better than this one. Like, this one lacks the realism that the other game's art had. Like, when you look at the Machine Empire's spider artillery, it looks amazing, and you see their Skeletors, and it looks great, and your mind can imagine the world in which these creatures exist in. And the same thing for Soul Infernum, the look of the demons in that game, the demon you create, the Prince of Hell that you make to represent yourself in that game as well. Fantastic. The armies, the items, they all look amazing. Really fantastic. Here, again, though, it's a lot more cartoonish, the art. And I've wrestled with my head about what score to give this. I think, if I'm going to be honest, and this is actually in my review, but as I'm thinking about it, I think this art was, like, so these zombies, like this art right here, this looks pretty good. Like, those things look creepy. I think it could look a lot better, like the Solium Infernum demons were looking like, but it's okay. And because of the writing of this game, but maybe I put this down in a different area, like how the writing in this game is funny. And I know we're not talking about the writing or story of the game, like some bits of it are very serious, but a lot of it have puns or pop culture references, like the refrigerator filled with organs from Mass Effect, Krogan, Asari, or the names of the various Witcher ingredients used for crafting from the first Witcher game, like Gnat's Acid and Trace from Beyond, for example. And so, I think the art actually works in that regard. If this game was very serious, if it took itself 100% serious, then the art, I would expect it to be a lot more realistic looking than what we have here. But because the story's a little fun, I think the art actually suits the game well. And so, instead of what I would normally have given it a 1, maybe on any other day I would give it a 1 for the art. I think it's good enough to get a 2 from me. So I will give it a 2 here out of 3 points. For the sound effects of the game, the sound is good. The boom you hear when clicking on a card that gives you, when you reveal a reward card that gives you, say, a ill omen or a wound or an impairment. Finally remembered, by the way, what the mental wound cards are called. Or when you fail an encounter and you get that boom sound. It really doesn't sound like a good thing. The clash you hear when the cymbals when you win a challenge, the sound of the knife attack hitting you whenever you lose wounds, the laughter of the sandy when you lose it. The sound is amazing. It's really great. Fits the game very well. There's no screams or the sound of the doors opening, even the movement. Sounds pretty good. Sounds about what I would expect for a game where you're exploring a creepy haunted house. I like it. Gets a 2. The music as well is going to get a 2 from me. I use the music for various D&D campaigns. I've uploaded the soundtrack for this game to my YouTube channel so that you guys could listen to it as well during the Halloween season, and I listen to it during Halloween. If I'm out, let's say, raking the yard, which I did not do this year, or I'm doing, I'm driving to and from work, which I also haven't done this year very much. And so, yeah, I think the music is very well done in keeping with other Cryptic Comet games. It doesn't outstay its welcome, and unlike the other games, which generally have only 2 tracks, this one has one for every level of the house, and they all fit very well. I like the inclusion of the game's main theme for the other areas of the house as well. Very nice touch. So music gets a 2 out of me as well. For the story, while the writing is fantastic, the story is lacking overall. Most of the encounters you'll get after you play through the game 2, maybe 3 times, assuming, of course, that you're able to survive on the first, second floors, you'll have seen the vast majority of the encounters that you're going to see. And eventually, you'll just start skipping all of them. You won't care about the story very much. You just want to get through the game and just get to the gameplay. We'll talk more about that later. The puns are hilarious, and I really like weaving in the pop culture. But the game has a lot of typos, and there's a few grammatical mistakes and so on. I've fixed some of them in my modded version of the game, but then there's also the later creatures and encounters, like in particular the abominations, that have very similar text to them. I get the feeling that, and to be fair to Vic, there's a lot of writing in this game. Like, there's a lot. And Vic, to my knowledge, was a... Look at that. See? You do get all the rewards around the reward card sometimes. Vic, to my knowledge, is the only person who worked on this game. Like, he wrote it, he coded it, he tested it. And so, and of course he had feedback on the testing on his forums back when he was active there. And although I really want to give this game higher than this, I feel it'd be unfair to give it more than a 1 on the story. Again, the writing is decent, but it is very punny, so you have to like that. And again, the main story itself, there's not much to it. And again, for all these encounters, once you read a handful of them, you'll skip them from then on. Now, that's probably being a bit unfair, because that would happen with any game that is actually even story-heavy, right? If you play it through once, you will want to take a break before you play through it again to read all the text, which is one of the reasons why I play this game only once a year or so. Like, only during 2 or 3 months of the year will I play this game during on my channel during Halloween months. Even then, I prefer limiting it to only 2 months, because it does take up one of the 4 slots for a video game that I like uploading. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm babbling. I think for the story, again, you get basically the entire text for what's going on when you select the mission itself, and you pick up a little bit of it through the clues, and then the final room. So I think a 1 is probably fair for story. For the gameplay, you know, this is where I become very opinionated. And it's unfortunate, I think, for this, but I want to be honest with you guys what I think. The game's main game, the solitaire-like card game, it's pretty lacking in tactical depth until you get like 10 trick cards on the board, at least 8, and have roughly like the same number of cards in your hand. Otherwise, the game revolves around looking at the number of cards on the table, what I have in my hand, and asking yourself, what is the likelihood those tricks will be of the same suit and lower than my remaining cards? I find that the card game that you play, basically plays itself. I almost never really have to think at all when playing the game. Only if I want to take a real gamble and hold on to a card because I'm fishing for maybe some more points to win a challenge that I've committed to. And you'll see me sometimes just automatically fail a challenge because I recognize that my hand is terrible. I have only a tiny bit of effort, or I need a great deal of luck to try to pass the challenge that's ahead of me here. Like, so here's an example. Like, what are the odds I win this challenge? Yeah, not good. And so I feel that the game really needs some. Well, okay, we'll get to the balance a little later. So for the gameplay, I really feel that the encounters you meet in the house are almost always... Alright, well, the encounters you meet in the house are always going to be the same, save for the mission ones you select at the start. So once you play through the game once, congratulations, you've seen the vast majority of the encounters you're going to get. Again, you might meet an abomination type that you didn't meet before, but the writing is almost exactly the same, and it's since you're playing the base unmodded version of the game, the one that you're not playing my version of the game, obviously, because I have modded the hell out of this somewhat, you have even less options than I have for the gameplay. And so, unfortunately, I just don't think the minigame itself is that interesting or engaging. And so, for gameplay, I can only give it a 1 out of 3. That's pretty low for me, I'm sorry, but it's again, plays itself, I don't really find it that interesting. Only later on, when you have unlocked more potential for trick cards on the board and cards in your hand, do I feel the gameplay opens up enough to make it fun to play. Or if you get a significant amount of combat cards or spells and are able to utilize them. Again, you won't see this until about the midway port of the game, and by then you're probably really powerful. For the GUI and controls of the game, I'm gonna roll in the text on all the cards, like the abilities we use and so on. On a score of 0 through 2, I give it a 0. It's absolutely atrocious. The controls are okay. The lack of a fast scroll is really aggravating. There is, though, by the way, because I went to review this, I went and looked up the game mechanics in the manual, because I have never read the manual for this game. I actually kind of played it on and off for a bit until I finally figured out how most of it worked. There are actually hotkeys you can use to help you scroll around the mansion. You can actually look at the second floor, the attic. If you have a map there, you can go up there and look at it, even if you're on the ground floor. However, that requires a numpad, and I don't have a numpad on this keyboard, so I can't zip around the house to look at these various things. So anyway, so the fast scrolling is rather painful. I can't zip back to my character whenever I want. I have to slowly scroll the screen around. At least that seems to be the case for me. The real disappointment for me in this game is the weapon, spell, item descriptions. They are painful, and they are just slightly different enough that if you do not read them very, very carefully, you might select the wrong ability when leveling up. This is one of the reasons why you see me save the game and then reload it if after I select like an edge or a feat. If I'm like, oh, this doesn't work the way I thought it did, I'm going to reload the game now. The other part about this is the level of the edges. We'll talk a little bit more about what was just complaining about, because it's in my review here. The edges, I don't understand how they were balanced. Some of them, for example, you can get an edge which says, like, this decreases the difficulty challenge by a random number between 1 and the maximum level of the edge. Guess what that maximum level of the edge is? 1. So it only decreases the challenge level by 1. Why not just say that? Instead of this way everyone knows not to pick it. This way everyone knows to pick the other one, which is lowers the difficulty of the challenge by X, where X is the level of the edge instead of a random number between 1 and 1. It's so weird how some of this is worded. And so for some examples of other badly worded things, like does that gun increase a card value in hand, or does it decrease the value of a trick card? Does the feat affect a revealed or unrevealed trick cards? Does it affect face or non-face cards? Can you increase the value beyond that of a number card to a face card, or is it reducing the face card value to a different card? The spell, is it is the spell used for a combat or just a battle option? Because those are very different, believe it or not. And so you won't have options to use some of your spells in some instances when it feels like you should. It's really painful to have to remember what all this is. And although your abilities and what have you will highlight green down below for when they are usable, you're going to really have to pay attention to the fact it did that in order for you to actually go ahead and utilize them. So I think for the control score, as I mentioned, I give it a 0. I actually have a bit of funny thing here, which I should have actually used instead. But I think, I think overall, I would normally give the controls a score of X, where X is the number of wands rolled minus the maximum number of revealed trick cards. Then subtract Y, where Y is the number of face cards in hand divided by 2. Come on. You expect people to remember all that nonsense? That's a bit much. For grindy. Now, this is a bit tricky. So, the game is not grindy, and it discourages it if you play with the story mode turned on. You could grind by, like, disabling a story mode, and then walking up and down, for example, the body bag hallway in order to try to farm zombies to give you experience points. You can do that, but most of the time, I would say the vast majority of the time, you won't do that. I've never seen any other YouTuber who actually played this game. There aren't very many of us who upload this game. None of them did it. I don't do it because I think you guys would find it boring, and I think farming off screen would be bad. Instead, if I'm just doing poorly, we just suffer through the game and see how far we can get. So I'm not going to dock any points for grind. The game doesn't require you grinding. It doesn't encourage you grinding either, generally. And again, if you play with the story mode turned on, which is what I think you should be doing most of the time, if only because you're on a time limit, then you kind of have to make some hard decisions a little faster than you saw me doing it in the last game I played. So I'm not going to dock any points for grind. For the bugs and frustration, so this game has a glitch, which Mark Williams verified is in the base game, that upon reaching 14 levelable edges, upon getting an upgrade edge card, the game will softlock, requiring you to alt-tab and kill it. We saw this year, and it was something I encountered frequently thanks to my modding of several edges. And this occurs, and thank you again, Mark Williams, for discovering this. This occurs because when the game tries to assign you that plus, it tries to display to you, at least this is what Mark discovered, all the edges, it can't fit all of them for you in its selectable menu, and so the game locks at that point. You can still, like, click on things, but the game won't do anything. You're basically, and it won't display you any of the edges either you can upgrade. It just stops. And that's in the base game. Like, what we encountered it a little more frequently when I was playing the game over the years, because I modded the edges to allow several of them to have a greater point value when leveled. For example, that one edge, like, again, which was lower the difficulty towns between 1 and a random number between 1 and level of the edge, and only levels up to 1, I let you put up to 3 points in that instead, for example. So this is why we encountered it more frequently, because more edges qualified to be leveled up. Now, there's also, again, a few typos and spelling mistakes. This is a bit annoying, but you can still make sense of the text overall. And again, there's a lot of it. I would feel a little bad docking it for that, but that glitch that locks you, that's horrendous. And it's been in the game for years. And I believe Cryptic Comet is no longer updating their games. So this is not something that will be patched. So if you pick up this game, or rather, I don't believe it will be patched. I am not Vic Davis. I do not know Mr. Davis. I do not work for Cryptic Comet. I know nothing about his schedule. I don't think he'll do it again or make any changes, because I believe he bowed out of the video game creation market. Just not for him. He liked, again, we're going on a tangent here, he liked the tool that he used, Adobe Director, but he found it frustrating, I believe, to use, if I remember his one interview, and decided that was it for him. He was moving into board games. I don't think he actually made any board games, which is a shame, because I would immediately buy them. This may seem, by the way, a bit weird, because overall you're going to see the score is a bit low, but I still love all his games. I still love all his games. I'll immediately buy another one if he ever makes one, because of how much I've enjoyed this man's ideas. All right, anyway. So for bugs and frustration, I feel that glitch, that's so painful when that happens. It ruins the entirety of the game for you, especially if you're doing well, doing really well, which you'd have to be to have so many edges that require leveling up. And so I'm going to dock 3 points from this game for that reason. So that's a lot of points to lose, but it does make the game basically You can still play it, but you're going to have to save it at the end of every single encounter, because there's always a chance later on in the game, as you get more and more luck, for example, that you could be gaining an edge upgrade card, and the moment you have a lot of edges that can be upgraded, that's the end of your run. So, yeah, so I think -3 is fair for this glitch. It's really frightfully annoying and requires you killing the game yourself and giving up, almost, depending upon how far in the game you got. For the game balance on a score of 0 through 2, well, this is where I have a full page typed. Here we go. So the game has several things going for it in terms of balancing. The AI actually tweaks numbers depending upon how well or how poorly you are doing, both overall and in an individual challenge attempt. My goodness, I should have written that a little bit differently. However, I have a dozen or so criticisms about how it goes about this, in addition to the overall game balance too. An encounter requires you, in the vast majority of times, to succeed at a horror challenge, which requires a good Wands and Pentacle stat, and then engage in combat, which often requires good Swords Cup stats. But sometimes it's still Wands and Pentacles, and sometimes it's going to be a psychological fight as well, which requires still Wands and Pentacles again. Traps require a high Cups value for the most part, and with Swords and Wands filling in, depending upon where your secondary strength is. To gain quests require a minimum probably of around like 2 or 3 Wands and Pentacles, which is very, very, very difficult to get if you're playing this on any other difficulty than Agent. If you're playing on a higher difficulty setting, something isn't normal, I have no idea how on earth you play this game without wanting to tear your eyes out of your head, or meet Vic Davis, buy him a beer, and strangle him to death. For some of the balance changes that are in there. Or maybe strangle him to death and then buy him a beer to apologize for doing so, given how frustrating some of this is. These requirements continue to grow as you proceed through different areas of the house, requiring even higher stat investments to have a chance of winning the encounters that you meet. However, higher stats will invoke the AI's balancing logic. The better you are doing, the higher stats you have, for example. Like, we have a 4 Pentacles now here on Jasper Celt, and the game is now going to be making it a little tougher for me, thinking that I'm doing well, when I'm not doing well at all. I'm barely getting by. Look at these hands, for example. It says, yeah, screw you too, game. I hate you. So, the better you do, the greater chance you have of losing more sanity and health cards and encounters. So if you're sitting at max health or max sanity, instead of losing just 1 or 2 points, you'll be losing 4 or 3 points. And the greater chance, by the way, you have of getting impairments or wounds, I believe, the higher your stats are. And of course, you'll be encountering more and more tougher creatures with these higher stats, and the game will be increasing the difficulty of these harder challenges anyway, because you have higher stats. You're obviously doing very well. You can take a wound or impairment. The game thinks to yourself, and this is actually really nightmarish for if you encounter one of them. All this sounds really good on paper, but in practice, I have found it very, very frustrating due to the artificial restrictions in this game. One in particular, you cannot take 3 additional skill cards. So generally, this means that you cannot improve 1 of your stats. You're going to have to neglect something. This is a absolutely miserable, in my opinion, idea. Whatever you're not good at is going to kill you when you reach the basement. If you're not good at fighting, well, most of the encounters in the base game, down in the basement, you're not going to be able to use psychic powers on when you fight them. You're going to instead be having to physically fight them. Most of the abominations, for example, require you actually physically fighting or fleeing. This will be very difficult for you to do if you didn't bother improving your swords at all. You're going to struggle a lot. Horror challenges down below in the basement. Well, guess what? You better have a lot of wands, or you're going to be failing these. You'll want good traps as well, so that means a high cups, or the traps will instantly kill you when you encounter them. Like, instantly. You'll flip over a penalty card, death. Or you don't have a good enough pentacles to get you a lot of draw for some of the horror challenges, and you can't beat the challenge. Instant insanity. So it's... I don't understand this. I get the feeling that, well, no, I shouldn't say what I suspect. Anyway, so overall, I suppose like that's the draw of a roguelike like this, though. Like, there's something you're weak at. You do the best you can. You shore up your defenses where you can, and you pray you're lucky enough to get through it and not flip over the wrong penalty cards when you're in a trap room and it's filling with water. And, well, actually, There, it's not so much the penalty cards. There, it's if you don't succeed at the challenge after 3 attempts, you're automatically killed. So, hope you do well in the game that you didn't put any cups in, for example, downstairs in the traps or down in the basement, because you're gonna die when that happens to you. Anyway, the particular part about it I really don't like is how the game, again, tweaks the difficulty of the encounter, depending upon how it feels it should be balanced. I hate this, because it feels like cheating to me. It feels like the game should have had some more balancing done to it overall, rather than letting the AI try to figure things out for you. And the other thing is that because the game can do this, because I know the game does this, it makes me suspect that it's always kind of cheating, that like maybe the rewards you get work this way as well. Like the game says, yeah, you're doing pretty good. You don't need any more rewards. Like, I'm not going to give you any Arcana cards or something of the sort. I don't think that's the case, but that doubt is always there, given that I know the AI does indeed tweak things when you play the game. And it certainly seems like I only get 1 face card in my hand when I draw 20 cards for a trap challenge, and only one of them is a face card, and it's like a page almost every single time. It's so annoying. It's so annoying, and I could swear it happens most of the time down in that basement. And then you have some strange design decisions with the game as well. For example, if you flee an encounter, the only reward you get for fleeing an encounter, generally, is loss of courage cards. I modded the game to remove those in the vast majority of encounters wherever I could find it. But sometimes it still peeks its ugly head in here because the game can randomly decide to give you better or worse cards than you would normally get in those instances. So, like, you'll never see me flip over reward cards on a success, because the only thing you can get for them, generally, is losing courage. It's so dumb. If I'm fleeing from an encounter, that's already a huge penalty, because I generally play the game on timed mode, and if I'm fleeing, not killing the thing, now I'm running around the mansion trying to ditch the creature that's chasing me, and that's time lost, and that gives me closer towards the end of the game. That's already a huge penalty for it. And again, the edges, how they're worded, and how some of them are balanced are just, it's so dumb. It's so dumb, some of them. Again, lower the difficulty of this challenge between a random number of 1 and the level of the edge, but the edge can only be leveled, can't be leveled at all. It starts at 1 and stays at 1. Why would you do that? Why not? It feels like that edge should have started at like 3 and stayed at 3. Rather, to make it worth taking, rather than the way it was currently balanced. I wish that instead of what this game does for your starting character, and the way that the game rewards experience points for experience points is another thing. You will be, it's either feast or famine, I think, with experience points, because at the beginning of the game you're struggling. Oh, am I done? Okay, thank goodness. How much time left? Okay, I got like 10 more minutes left. I was worried. I recorded like 35 minutes of the game thinking that'd be enough time for me to talk about all the aspects of it, and when I saw myself go back to main menu, I'm like, oh no, why am I going back to main menu? No, please tell me I still have more time to talk. All right, so for the experience, I find it's feast or famine, because once your 10 points or higher over the difficulty of the challenge, you get 7 reward cards, and that's the maximum you can get. And the more cards you flip, I think it's like a scratch off. Well, kind of. I don't know if the rewards are set in stone when you flip over these cards or not, or if it's the game just decides right then and there when you flip the card if that card's going to have something for you or not. But the more rewards you have, obviously, the greater chance you have of maybe, I don't know actually for sure, of getting obviously a reward. And often this is experience points. And as your ore of luck goes up, you get better rewards and more experience points. And so you end up in a situation where at the very beginning of the game, every experience point you get is extremely precious. And if you focus on your stats to make the game play with, for example, more trick cards, or more draw cards that you get, or lower the difficulty, you'll begin having an easier time of it. It's one of the reasons why you don't see me, I try not to take any like extra edges or feats, because courage is hard to come by, and the edges won't really matter as early on. I want to begin improving all of my stats, if it's possible, at least 1 point, preferably 2, so I can get through the rest of the first floor and have a chance at the second floor. It makes all the games much easier to do, and in this case as well, means that you get more rewards afterwards, which you can then put into increasing your stats even more, which makes the game even easier, and so on and so forth. So I wish that instead of the balance being so kind of oddly lopsided, I wish that leveling up was tougher to do and or less frequent, and instead your character started stronger. Like during the gameplay, you might never reach max level. You have to get very extraordinarily lucky to take every single skill on all your skill cards. Generally, by the time I reach the basement, I've already leveled myself up completely. So if we were able to say, I want to pick my character gets 2 spells, 1 piece of Cup's equipment, 1 Wand's item that doesn't increase my stat but gives me something, some sort of miscellaneous effect, and a weapon of some sort. Like, make me start a little stronger so I feel a little more confident about these beginning encounters, and or make some of these abilities or items, let them, like, add extra trick cards to the board. Maybe they don't even have to give me a stat. Just make the game more fun to play by giving more options. Maybe something that lets me, like, scry, like, 2 cards or something on the screen, or drop a trick card and add a new random one, or anything of the sort to make the game not autoplay itself, I think would have been much better. There's more I could say, and there's a lot more for the balance I could talk about, but we'd be here for an hour. And I know you guys don't mind, but I don't want to talk about the game balance for an hour for Occult Chronicles. So, all of that said, on a scale of 0 through 2, I will grudgingly give this game a 1 for balance. There is some balance here. If it wasn't balanced at all, I wouldn't play the game. I do think the balance is a bit all over the place, and sometimes the game feels very well balanced. Other times, most of the time, it is not. And it doesn't feel that way either. And when I play it early on, I'm always gritting my teeth, terrified of getting like an early wound and just throwing the character away, which has happened more times than you guys would ever be able to know, because none of those characters where I got a wound or impairment at during the first 60 turns, the first 2 story tokens, none of those characters generally were ever uploaded to my channel. I just immediately threw them away. I was like, nope, we're starting all over. I'll take a day or 2 break and we'll do it over again, because of how miserable that is. Okay, so that's enough about game balance. I give it a 1 on a 0 through 2. For my thumb on the scale, there are things I really enjoy about. So this is my bias, where I try to keep in mind I am biased towards or against the game. There are some things I really enjoy about this game, and there are some things I really dislike about it. It's a guilty pleasure. I have a love-hate relationship with this. Some days I feel this is a great game despite all of its flaws, and I'm amazed at the amount of work Vic Davis put into it. Other days, I can't stand the card game, the constant drawing of aces, or lack of face cards that plague me. I hate it. I curse and swear off screen. You have no idea how much I have had to do that. I lost my temper this year. I lost my temper and swore. I almost never do that. I generally try cutting that out of all the games I play. I absolutely lost it. And there are sometimes I'm playing the game and I'm like, this is miserable. Why do I do to myself this every year? And yet, still, I will fire it up, and I'll enjoy reading about all the traps, about the tablets at the pan of acid. Every year, I'll do it. Because overall, although there are some, again, things I hate about this game, there are things I do like about it. So I feel a 1 here is probably appropriate for me. I like the ideas and the work Vic put into all of this in all his games, but some of it just, it doesn't work for me. For the awesome ending points, well, the final combat is terrifying no matter what you are fighting, and it can be pretty cool if you do find the special clue token on basement level 3 to assist with it. Alas, the end combat is generally not going to be reached for weak characters, and strong characters, you're going to steamroll it anyway. So, the writing at the very end is always kind of funny. I like the way Vic Davis wrote them, but I just can't give it the awesome ending point. So you don't get it here. So unless my math was wrong, on a scale of -7, which would be the absolutely most miserable game ever, and I have not played that game, to a 20, which is the perfect game, which I have also not played, Occult Chronicles gets a 7. It's a thematic haunted house where you'll see most of the scares your first time through, and see little choice for tactical decision-making in the tactical gameplay. The writing is good, with puns intermixed with seriousness, but the challenge can be artificially tweaked by the AI, to keep things difficult when they don't have to be. There's some grammatical errors, some balance issues, and quite a bit of frustration in managing skills and edges. Also, oh no, I'm done! Alright, well, I'm done. Right at the very end, too. Alright, well, let's kill the media player, and you guys will see my background for a little bit. Hello there. Alright, yes. Also, some of the decisions benefit particular modes of play, gaining completing quests versus fighting the quest encounters over others whenever I play. So everyone, unfortunately, I cannot recommend Occult Chronicles despite my liking the game. I'm willing to forgive the game its faults and mod a great many others that I found that I did not like, but others cannot mod the game. I cannot recommend it. Any game that I score less than a 10, I can't recommend anyone else pick up. Even if you hear me say I like it, there are too many things wrong with it, and in the end, I'm probably playing that game more because I'm willing to overlook some of its faults than I know that you guys would if you pick it up. So there you have it. Thank you guys for watching. I can't believe I ran out of gameplay, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.